Alright guys, we're going to start the principles of design. Now there's different consensus over what the principles of design actually are. Our academia cannot seem to boil it down to a set number. So these are one of the more common ones that you will see when people do groups of them. So balance, emphasis, movement, pattern, rhythm, contrast, and unity. So if the elements of art are your toolkit, then the principles of design are your blueprints. All great artwork utilizes the principle of design. There are no set number of principles, like I said. They're grouped in combinations of 7 or 8, sometimes even 9 or 10. I've seen it as high as that. But you have to use the principles of design in order to make your artwork look good, basically. Though you can create interesting artwork via the elements, but the principles are how you use the elements to create artwork. So let's go to the next one. So this first half, I'm going to talk about balance. Balance is basically the way in which elements in visual arts are arranged to create a feeling of equilibrium in an artwork. There are 3 types of balance, and that's symmetry, asymmetry, and radial balance. Now, what I have under symmetrical is a butterfly. It is perfectly within its frame. It is even on both sides. It doesn't mean that the butterfly is symmetrical. It means that basically, if you were to cut this in half, there's about equal amount of butterfly on each side. If you get over here to asymmetrical, which is Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, this right here, the cypress tree, kind of offsets this over here. It's balanced between these 2 elements, but they're not the same. It's not equal in each section of the painting. So this has a little bit more stuff in it than it does over here. If we look at radial, you see anything with radial, including mainly you'll get this from math, it means it's in a circle. So that means everything is spread out evenly in a circle. So a radial balance would be something like this stained glass window. Mandalas are an excellent example of radial balance. It basically means it's in a circle. The balance goes circular. Okay, movement. The principle of design that deals with the creation of movement. Now, it's not exactly physical movement, except for like the Alexander Calder right here. We will be making some of these later on in the year for Art 1. But it's the sense that it moves. The eye is guided throughout the artwork to go somewhere. So like right here, you're guided going up like this and down like this through the arms. You're guided vertically throughout Henri Matisse's Icarus. Had to remember the name of the myth he was using, but this is Icarus. It can be accomplished with it actually with figures in motion, or simply through just plain visual elements. Just how the lines you use are directing, what textures go what and where. This right here has actual physical movement to it, but you can follow it. You'll start up here and then you'll kind of go sashaying back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So that's how movement is affected, how you can create movement in an artwork. Now, emphasis. Emphasis is a biggie. I've not seen a single list without emphasis on it. So basically, it is a special attention or embellishment on an element, characteristic, or object in a work of art that makes it stand out from the others. So most of the time, your subject will be what stands out. If we look at Andrew Wyeth's work here, you can see that this woman here in pink, being that she's the only thing in pink and she is the largest in the painting, she is emphasized. If we go over here to Georgia O'Keeffe's Cascall, you can see that this right here, this big white star, the stark white and large object here is the emphasis. We know what the emphasis is because it stands out to us. Now, this could be done through any of the visual elements, using any of the elements of art. So just play with it. Emphasis just means you're drawing attention to something. Contrast. Contrast can be fun, and it also makes your artwork pop. The differences between two or more elements, value, color, texture, etc., in a composition also refers to the degree of difference between lightest and darkest areas of an image. That's mostly the value contrast here. Value contrast is basically your value scale. How dark and how light. What's the range of values? How much absolute black and how much absolute white do you have in an image, and how many grays in between? So this is value contrast. It's a heavily contrasted image, but you can do color contrast where you combine complementary colors, such as this blue and orange on the Goethe scale. They really pop when they're right next to each other. That's a good color contrast. But you also have texture contrast. For an example here, this orange is nice and smooth. It barely has any bumps on it. If you were to fill the bumps, it's still very flat compared to this really rough bark right here that it's sitting on. So contrast, basically, it highlights the variety and the differences and everything else. It makes a lot of difference having contrast. It really makes your artwork pop if you have contrast. Okay, now we're going to go on to the last three. So rhythm. These ones are a little bit harder to kind of explain. But rhythm, it's repetitive visual elements that achieve a special effect. Inside your sketchbooks, the definition I have down is the visual tempo set by repeating elements in a work of art or architecture. So basically, if you look here, it's a repeating element, but it's not like a pattern. This one's more closer to a pattern. So it's step by step by step by step by step. So this feels very steady. This feels a little bit more chaotic. But it's just repeated elements, but they kind of set like a tempo of this. This feels very cold and very like set, like it's a very steady kind of rhythm. Well, this one's a little bit more chaotic because it has a lot more just going around. It's not, perfectly spaced like this one, so things kind of interrupt this one here. So rhythm is, like I said, is a little harder to explain and get, but it's basically the tempo that you're setting. This works more chaotic. This something is a little more grounded and steady because it's more even. This one's more chaotic simply because it's simply a little bit more messier. So that's how the rhythm is working. Pattern is sometimes used in conjunction with rhythm. Sometimes they'll have one or the other in a list, but pattern is basically a design, an image, or shape repeated in a predictable combination. That's the big thing about patterns, is they are repeatable, that they are repeated in a predictable combination. If we go back here, this one, it's not a pattern, really. That's one big difference between pattern and rhythm. So this one is a pattern because it's predictable, but this one being more chaotic, it's not a pattern here. So, but if we go here, Islamic art is known very, very much for their geometric patterns. They don't have iconography, so they use geometry and calligraphy to decorate, basically. And these are very beautiful predictive patterns. This right here, if you're wondering what this is calligraphy and Arabic text. If we go here to this mandala, there's that radial symmetry again. But it's very, very predictable. It follows the same formula, each concentric circle after one another. Then we go over to something a little bit more chaotic, a Gustav Klimt's Adele Bloch-Bauer I. This one's actually made of gold, so that's pretty interesting. But he has little sections of patterning all along her dress here, all along and behind her. He's known for those beautiful patterns. And they can be a little chaotic, but they're still very predictable exactly what's going on. But they're still very kind of easily, there's a lot of movement in his patterns because he really leads the eye just about everywhere. Okay. Now the last one I'm going to talk about is unity, and unity is super, super, super important for your work. Everything has to be unified, because if it's not, it stands out and it makes the work so much weaker. So, unity, a principle of design that connects a variety of elements of art and principles of design into a work of art with harmony and balance. Sometimes you will see harmony added in with, in place of unity or alongside unity as a element of art, but it's basically unity. If we look here at this, I believe, Romer Bearden work, notice that all the musicians in the band and the orchestra are kind of shaped very similar. It would be super jarring if we had this entire orchestra and this one person in like a photorealistic sense. Or if we had this one person like this and the background, the band, as photorealistic people. That would really be jarring, and it would feel like he was just cut and pasted from somewhere else. Like he doesn't really belong there. That's the big thing about having unified work. Georges Seurat, the Grand Jatte. This is a very famous painting, but all of this, all the people look very similar, like they're done in the same style. There's nothing out of place here, really. That's the big thing to note, is that nothing feels out of place. It looks like everything is supposed to be here. If you were to shove a realistic person in here, if you were to shove maybe even the conductor from the previous painting over in here, it would feel jarring. You want everything to feel like it belongs together in that painting or any work of art. So it's just how everything interacts with each other. You also want your composition to feel kind of unified, like everything's supposed to be exactly where it's supposed to be. So those are the principles of art, principles of design that we will be covering. Again, the 7 elements of art and the principles of design are all of these are defined in your sketchbook. Now, we will be having a test over all of these, and you can use your sketchbook as a study guide, because that's where I will be pulling the questions from. Okay? And I will see you in the next video.